So listen, today I am going to do more of a vlog kind of a video for you. I've been dealing with trying to make this video about racial battle fatigue, and I have my dissertation here to read from it. I've been shooting this video off and on for days, mentally running it over in my mind for months, and I just made a decision about how I'm going to proceed. So in this video, I'm going to talk with you about racial battle fatigue and some decisions I've made as a way to combat the fatigue I'm feeling as a professor that teaches about race, class, and gender. Stay tuned. Greetings all, Dr. X here, good to see ya. All right, so I've been struggling with making this video about racial battle fatigue for weeks now. And even when I started shooting it, I've been shooting the videos and clips for it for the last couple of hours, and I've had to keep stopping because it's so both personal and emotional for me. Because I deal with racial battle fatigue, as do most African Americans in the society. And so I had to stop, and I was going to just scrap the whole thing and give it up. But then I thought about something that I think will help me, and maybe it'll help other people as well. So for those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Xeturah Woodley. I am an associate professor now. I just got tenure and promotion. I'm an associate professor in learning design and technology at New Mexico State University, where I teach people about teaching online, about culturally responsive teaching and learning. I am all about instruction and curriculum. And so the reason I'm talking about racial battle fatigue, in addition to the work I do and the teaching I do at the university, I am a researcher who has a lot of foundations in feminisms, womanisms, and critical race theory. And so I talk about race, issues of race, ethnicity, class, and gender in most of what I write, most of what I teach, both at the university and at the community college. And so as an African American woman in higher education in the United States, I too experience levels of oppression and discrimination that isn't often talked about with people. So they look at me and they say, oh, she's a university professor. There's privilege that comes with that. And they're right. I want to be responsible for, there are certain levels of privilege I have because I have higher degrees and because I work as a professor in a university. Absolutely. I benefit in certain ways that other people would not be able to because they don't carry the same cultural capital that I do. So that's the first thing I want to acknowledge. Yes, there are levels of privilege that I enjoy because of my degrees, because of my now rank at the university. I think there is privilege and benefit that comes from that. And one of those benefits is having a platform in order to talk more broadly and widely about issues of race and racism, about privilege and prejudice, about power and gender inequity. I have a bigger platform in a lot of respects to do that because I can do that in my publications, my journal articles, in a book that me and a colleague, our first book we're putting out, and because I get invited to come and speak as a keynote speaker, as a workshop presenter. I travel all over the country. Because of my status, I'm able to do that and have a wider platform than other people do. But even in the face of my achievements academically, and even in the face of my career achievements, I still deal with the onslaught of racism and gender oppression that Black women face in the society. And so even when I step into a classroom, I still have to deal with people's already way of knowing and their perceptions about me because I'm a Black woman walking into the classroom. And so, for example, when I was younger, I would physically walk into a classroom that I was teaching, and people would assume I was another student in the class. They wouldn't. Until I walked up to the front of the classroom, they didn't think that I was the faculty member. As a matter of fact, sometimes they thought I was the graduate assistant or the teaching assistant in the class and not the professor for the course. Even when they knew I was the professor, I've had students that have walked out of my class and told me they're leaving because there's nothing I could teach them. And that's all because I'm a Black person standing in front of the class. And so I too have experienced racism, not just in society as a whole, being stopped by the police, being followed in grocery stores. Yes, all of that has happened to me as well, being called the N-word on a regular basis, being bused. When I was a child, we were part of the group that got bused to integrate white schools. And so I've experienced all of that. I've experienced what it means to be on the front lines of the fight, to be in protest rallies, to be in marches, to stand up and speak out against oppression for people. All of that I have done and continue to do, even as a university professor. But because racism and bigotry and prejudice and hatred are often perpetuated against me and directed toward me, both in academic settings and in outside of academia, I get to the point where I just am exhausted with dealing with it. And so now I'll go ahead and read a little something for you from my dissertation. But I too experience racial battle fatigue. Like, you just get tired and you've had enough. And I think now, as we're seeing everything that's happening in the larger society, I think I'm experiencing it even more deeply, because not only am I looking at the protests and have been participating in the protests that are going on, I'm also having to teach about it this semester in one of the classes I'm teaching around that, specifically race, class, and ethnicity. And with it being inundated in my life so much, both in my professional life and in my personal life, I really feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm just exhausted, where I just can't do it anymore. And I think that's what's been so difficult for me about making this video, is because I have to keep stopping the shooting of the video to cry a little, and then I'll start again, and then I'll stop it to just go and start going off verbally about it. I mean, to call a friend to make sure I'm still sane, like to pull from those strategies that we've developed as people of color over the years, just to navigate the madness, to pull from those strategies that we as women have created and strategically developed over the years, just to deal with the sexism. Like, you have to pull from everything when you reach that point of exhaustion that you're ready to just give up. And so let me just read this one little clip from my dissertation, and then I'll tell you, sorry, I have a creaky chair. I'll tell you what I've decided. Okay, so the part I'll be reading from, there is one of my research participants, for those I haven't shared with you about my dissertation. So my dissertation was a research study. I was an administrator at a community college when I worked on my dissertation. And I decided to interview African American women in higher education in the state of New Mexico to see what their experiences have been in New Mexico compared to, for example, if they were at a historically Black college or university, or if they were at a, predominantly white institution. Would the experiences of women at predominantly Hispanic institutions, African American women, be the same, or different than Black women at other institutions? And so one of the things that I found was consistent regardless of whether they were at a predominantly white institution or a predominantly Hispanic institution, was cases of racial battle fatigue, where African American women were just exhausted with having to deal with the onslaught of racism that they would have to deal with consistently on a regular basis. So what I'm about to read for you was the statement I wrote after hearing the story that one of my participants told. And in her story, it was really about what it was like for her when one of her white colleagues refused to believe that a common colleague they had, a male colleague, was actually African American. So the participant in my study was talking about, here, I'll just read this. We had an incident where basically this is my participant. I'm calling her Amanda, and I'm calling her Amanda. They all have pseudonyms. So this was Amanda. We had an incident where basically one person thought I was somewhere else, and in just walking by the fountains and the sound of my voice, they thought I was someone else. As the conversation went on, I stated to them, "Oh, no, I'm not that person because that person, one, is male, but they are Black." The person who was white could not believe that this other person was Black because he's really fair-skinned. He's mixed. He is Black and like Puerto Rican or something. I don't know. She was incredulous and she kept going on. "No, he's not. He is not Black." I was like, "Yes, he is." Then when he walked by and he said, "Yes, I am. I'm Black," she was floored. She could not fathom that somebody that looked like him was a Black man. That was not really racism, but just, I don't know, being uninformed and stupid, and I don't know, laughter. Then she proceeded to ask multiple people in our office if they knew that he was Black, and everyone else said yes. Now, the people she proceeds to ask are white people to verify that even what the man himself was saying was true, that he was Black. So what I write in my reflections on that piece: the woman in Amanda's story was so committed to hanging on to her stereotype of what a Black person looks like that she did not even believe the Black man when he told her he was Black. Consistently fighting this type of ignorance, both in subtle and blatant forms, can lead to racial battle fatigue. And I cite Smith from one of his articles in 2004. Dr. Smith uses this term to describe the exhausted condition Blacks find themselves in after dealing consistently with the ubiquity of covert and overt prejudice, stereotyping, and other forms of racist behavior. Now, Joy, another participant in my study, talked about it this way. She said, "It's in the way that I think, and then it's just weird because, then I feel like I've become the one who keeps saying, but what about this? And what about this?" And you're not even looking at those students and you're not looking at these people. And so Joy and Amanda's comments exemplify what we have to deal with in higher education as educators, Black women on a day-to-day basis, when dealing with the macroaggression, systemic oppression, and microaggressions that happen. It becomes exhausting and it becomes too much. We can experience that physiologically, emotionally, mentally. I think part of me even shooting this video really I've been trafficking in dealing with emotional, mental, and physical responses to just even talking about it, right? So anyway, here's what I've gotten to. I've gotten to be able to finish this video finally. But what's more than that, I've come to a decision. I really am going to start investigating and looking at ways that I can learn to say no from this point forward. No to continually being the source for other people of learning when it comes to racism. Of learning to say no to and pushing back on those demands that are consistently made of me in higher education across the country, those demands that are made of me to be the one that speaks up and says, what about this or what about that? The one that has to be the stand for other people, the one that has to be the voice for my whole race because I'm the only one you've hired. So, the only Black woman in a department, the only Black woman that can teach this one course, the only Black woman that can do this. Hire more Black women. Like, it really is that simple. Hire more Black people. I'm not the only one with a PhD. Start inviting other people. And so here's my invitation to those of you who are watching this video that are former students of mine. If you are a student of color, I'm inviting you to also learn ways in which you can effectively and efficiently take care of yourself in the midst of your racial battle fatigue. But I'm inviting you to get those higher degrees. Get your master's degree and start teaching at the community college. Get your PhD and teach at the university. I'm not saying that you only have to teach there. I'm saying teach one class once a year to take my place. Really simple. Take my place. You have learned more than enough from me where you can take my place and teach one class a year about your experience. People need to hear what your experience is. And having the platform of an educational venue can make a difference for people to learn about how to make a difference in classrooms, how to make a difference at jobs. I invite you to take my place on the platform, okay? So for those of you who are my white students, who are my white students or Anglo students or students, and even colleagues and friends that are non-people of color, here is my invitation to you. I invite you to take my place on the protest line. Like, pick up a sign. See, this is why I have to keep stopping. But I'm not going to this time. I'm going to get through this. So pick up a sign on my behalf. Make it easy for me to be able to live my life outside of the protest line by taking my place on the front lines. If you've been a student in my class, if you are one of my colleagues, then you have more than enough information that you need about the ills that we as people of color face in this society. So if you want to do something for me, no need to keep calling and checking in on me. I appreciate it, but you don't have to call me anymore. I'm fine. What you can do, though, is go take my place on the picket line. Go take my place in the march. Go take my place and fight just as hard and use your privilege to make a difference so that we don't have to keep having these marches, so that we don't have to keep fighting this same fight. If you are my ally, then take up the cross and walk forward. That's what you could do. You could pick up your cross, pick up your sign, pick up your backpack, pick up whatever it is, and do it so that I don't have to. At this point, I shouldn't have to. You should be willing to take the fight up for me. All right. And if you are willing to take that invitation and move forward and fight so that I don't have to, and I know it's in your more than capable hands, know that I appreciate that. I really do. And because of that, then I can focus on other things and not have to focus on race and racism and teaching those concepts, because I know you're on the front lines fighting for me, and in your classrooms, you're teaching the same thing. Okay? All right. I can't believe I've got through it. Just a few tears showing. All right. So thanks so much for listening. I am Dr. Xeturah Woodley, and for those of you that are in my courses this semester, I'm glad that you're here this term because it may be one of the last semesters that I actually teach a class specifically on race, class, and gender. I think that with enough of my students, all those students that have taken my classes, one of them are welcome to teach my classes on race, class, and gender. I think I'll keep teaching about online teaching and learning though, maybe from a culturally responsive way. I'll just keep doing that. Okay, thanks so much for watching and have a terrific week.